We're going to talk today about July 30th, 31st. That's not actually this coming weekend, which is the 23rd, 24th. And if you'd like to remember what's going on last week or this coming weekend, watch last week's weekly. We're now going to be a week and a half out when we talk about these. So this is for July 30th, 31st. We're going to be talking about foreskin. So we did circumcision and then we did genital warts. Now we're talking about foreskin. I mean, how much more fun could we possibly be having? I just want to throw out that Ben Depew did an awesome trick, which was he mentioned how there used to be a show called Pee-wee's Playhouse, and every time they said the day of the word, everybody went, and he made the day of the word circumcision. Well, I would recommend for July 30th, 31st, you might try that as well, that you make the day of the word foreskin. We've discovered that young 7th graders don't necessarily know what these things are, so you might need to take a minute to describe it. I might compare foreskin to if you tailored a suit, there would be extra fabric. Well, foreskin is when circumcision is performed, which is a tailoring of the penis. So there you go. That's the best way I can do for describing that for you. Good luck with that. This story is a crazy one, though, because David goes to what is soon to be his father-in-law, who is king of the land, who is Saul, I believe. That was weird. I forgot. So Saul, and he goes to him, and Saul kind of wants to kill David, really, but instead what he does is promise him his daughter. He says, if you will go kill 100 Philistines and bring me back 100 of their foreskins, which would be proof that you killed them, you can have my daughter. And David is so against the Philistines because the Philistines were idol worshippers. They were sacrificing their children. Just not good folk. Let's just put it that way. I would see him as equivalent to like IJM people going in to rescue slave girls, that he was like, Philistines are doing bad stuff, so I have no problem going to do this mission of killing 100. But he gets so excited about what he's doing that he kills 200 and brings back 200 foreskins. So the most amazing part of this story for me is that David is called a man after God's own heart. And it's really crazy to think of him as a man who is zealous to go kill the enemy, to kill 200 and to bring back 200 foreskins. So it's a strange story, and it's okay by me, and especially I would say maybe even better than okay. What I prefer is that you not wrap it up in a bow, but instead end with maybe like a provoking question, like what does it mean to be a man after God's own heart, and how could it possibly look like David, who goes and circumcises and kills 200 men? So that would be a good way to end, is on this provoking question. There's really good pod questions at the end. Like how does this line up with the way that you view being a Christian? I think a lot of these Old Testament stories, what we've realized the theme is passivity and against passivity. And we've turned Christians into hippie, peace-loving Jesus Christians instead of realizing there's all these badass stories in the Old Testament. So we just want to revive what it looks like to be this kind of assertive and aggressive man of God. All right, that's where you're going to go for the week of July 30, 31st. Enjoy foreskins. Hey, this week we're going to be talking about the story of Elijah and Baal, which is one of my favorite stories in the Bible. Baal was actually a false god, possibly even just blatantly evil. So the people who were worshiping Baal were worshiping evil. And Elijah, on the other hand, is a prophet of God. And in this story, this amazing thing happens where they decide to go head to head and like a prophet off. And so they decide to put these calves or cows on altars, and their whole goal is to call down the fire of heaven to light these altars. And it's kind of awesome because the Baal worshippers try to do it through harming themselves. The first cutters in the Bible, Baal worshippers, they cut themselves with swords and try to do crazy dances to get the altar to light on fire, and it just doesn't happen. And if you read the story in 1 Kings 18, the craziest part is Elijah ends up like making fun of them a little and is like, whoa, is your God on vacation? Why can't he hear you? You should call louder. And so he taunts them, which is crazy boldness in Elijah. And then on the other hand, Elijah sort of shows off because he wets the altar completely. Like he pours water all over it, which means it should be impossible by natural standards for it to light on fire. And then he just calls down the God of heaven, who created heaven and earth, to light it. And indeed, it lights on fire. And all of these prophets go running. And that day, the Hebrews were able to be victorious in battle over the prophets of Baal. So it's an amazing story of sort of like showing off in our faith. The one thing I don't want to happen, though, is for kids to be like, I'll never be able to do that. The truth is that Elijah himself had moments where he felt alone, that he felt attacked, but he was faithful in the small. Up until that point, there's a lot of times when Elijah just says things that God tells him to say, even in the small places. And so you can see how his faith has gotten bolder through time. In Romans 12:6, it actually says, whatever gifts you have, you should use them in accordance with your faith. And it's clear that Elijah has slowly built up his faith by being obedient in the small. And so this kind of kick-ass story of the prophet comes from just being obedient in the small things. That's what I would love for you to talk about in your pods. And another verse that you might be able to use if you get stuck in your pods is Psalm 9:1, where it says, I will give thanks to the Lord with all my heart, and I will recount all of his wonderful deeds. And you could take a moment to just recount times where the Lord has been wonderful so that it bolsters the faith of the kids in your pod. Have fun with that story. It's one of my favorites. Also, a small warning that it may bring up the conversation of cutting again. I think that's fantastic when stuff like that surfaces. If you need support, though, feel free to go to your service leader or to a staff. All right, have fun with Elijah and Baal. I don't know what's going on, but I keep wearing this same shirt every Tuesday when we film this video. Just kidding, I'm on vacation, which is the funnest part about making these videos in advance. It feels like those like posthumous videos where somebody makes it and you hear it after they're dead. I feel like I'm calling you from vacation. Anyway, so this coming week we're going to play a really fun game. This is for the weekend of August 13, 14, and for that weekend we're going to play a game where you get kids into groups, probably half their pod size, and play a game we're calling the bunk bed game.
Look at all this floor space. So much aerobics in here. So many activities. This is how we do it. Da, 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 da. Hey, I never asked you. Yeah. You like guacamole? Oh! Oh, God! Run! There's blood everywhere. The bunk beds were a terrible idea. Why did you let us do that?
And we're going to have several slides for you that show different positions that kids should get in when you call it out. So we're going to say things like bunk bed, and with their bodies they have to form a bunk bed. Or I'm not sure what the other crazy ones are going to be yet, but you should easily be able to do it based on the slides. The only thing is that we might occasionally combine them. So if one is like campfire and everybody gets around it, then if we do bunk bed campfire, you'd form a bunk bed in the middle with everybody around it. You get what I'm saying? So have fun with it, and there should be ones that are just better than others, and you narrow it down until you have a bunk bed winner. That's the goal. That seems crazy, but there's a reason why, because the story this week, you're going to play Bible Jersey Shore again, but the story this week is the story of Elisha raising a boy from the dead, and the way that he does it is kind of crazy, and so we want to learn to hear from the Lord even when he calls out crazy things and to just do. So in this story, Elijah goes and stays with a person whenever he's traveling, and he prophesies to this family that they're going to have a son, even though at this point it seemed impossible. And a year later, when he goes back to visit, indeed they've had a son. And he continues through the years to stay with his family, and as the son gets older, one year he comes and the boy has died just seconds before he's arrived. You can go and read the story in 2 Kings 4, 1 through 36. I actually think he sends somebody ahead first. You can just tell that Elisha has really bold faith that because this is a son that the Lord has prophesied, that he is not going to die. And the faith that Elijah has is amazing. But when he gets to the house and the boy is dead, what he does is lay down on top of the boy. He spreads himself out on top of the boy. Might be primitive CPR, not really sure. But he gets up, and you can tell he totally expects the boy to rise from the dead, and he doesn't. And so he just lays down on him again and tries it again, and indeed the boy rises from the dead. Elisha's faith here is just astonishing, because even when it doesn't work what he thinks will work, he just does it again. You can tell that he's resolute in believing in the Lord's promises. So Elisha's faith here should just be provoking, and that's what I'm really hoping for, is that kids' faith is bolstered. One of the things that we had suggested for this week is, because it's such a good story, that they could maybe just get quiet and listen to the story, and then you could tell the teaching points and talk about it more. But however you want to approach it is fine by me. Anyways, for pod time, we've got some great questions. Just talk about what are the weirdest parts of the story, and try to connect with it. That's it. That's for the weekend of August 13, 14. See you next week.